go, going live. Okay, we are live now, so welcome to anyone watching, and we're going to try to keep an eye on the YouTube chat, which you will find. Let me share my screen. Our YouTube chat is in the lower right corner. And notes on the left side here, so keep an eye on that chat. Let me know if you see something pop up there that I don't notice, and go ahead and get started here. So let's see, who is able to help with notes today? Ben?
I'm afraid that's not me.
Okay, Ben's got it. We've got some of the usual folks here, but we do have a new attendee with us. And I want to introduce Dr. Rick Williams. And before I have him introduce himself, let me explain that Rick has been generous enough to take over several of the responsibilities that Bob Rieger is stepping away from, including managing our help desk, all the tickets coming in and answering all the questions that come in through the help desk. He's also reviewing all of the badge requests that are coming in and handling those badge requests. And we're going to be talking about some chapter related stuff as well. So first, I just want to say, Rick, thank you so much for stepping in and all the work that you're doing. And maybe we could just have you give a quick introduction and a little background on yourself, please.
Yeah, certainly. I've been watching and somewhat involved with e-NABLE over the years, and love the work you guys do. We've done quite a few builds of our own. We've posted some of them on e-NABLE. I'm very tickled to see Mr. Buchanan there. I'm a huge fan of his.
Yes, glad he made it. We'll be allocating almost the entire session today to you. So we're just going to cover a couple of action items here, Jack, and then we'll get over to you. So Rick, anything else you want to share?
Oh no, just happy to be here, and thank you guys for all the support over the years.
Yeah, we're thrilled.
Rick, what is your background?
My PhD is in computer science and engineering. I was a staff PhD for Hitachi building mainframes and supercomputers, and I retired about 5 years ago.
I see. All right.
So lucky to find you. Thank you for joining us, and hope to have you with us in these going forward. And as I said, I'm just going to go through a couple of quick things here that we usually do at the beginning, our action items and a couple of other details, and then we'll leave the rest of the session to Jack to share the Kuawu 3.0, which I'm very excited to see and hear about. So action items, we only have a couple right now. One of them is on hold for me, dealing with this matching platform needs analysis. We do have a positive response from our friends at Deloitte UK saying that they are interested. They're just trying to verify that they have somebody available who could take this on. So I'm waiting to hear back, but they are interested in helping out with this. So that's a very exciting development. Hopefully we'll have some movement there soon. John and Ben are still working on developing our listings on the Handshake platform for getting interns through colleges. Last I heard, Ian Roy was going to help you guys kind of improve how we're using that platform. Has there been any further contact on that end or any discussions there?
One development is that yesterday Brandeis reached out to see whether we were interested in interns for the fall.
Okay.
I didn't respond directly. I forwarded it to Ian, who's likely to be the quarterback on that. So nice. We're inching along on this.
Good. Okay, I'm going to skip the other ones that are kind of on hold for now. Today, of course, is the special presentation. I never updated the date, but this is going to be today. Looking forward to hearing about the Kuawu 3. Real quickly, we'll look at our metrics. Nothing really stands out here as out of the ordinary. Still have a very healthy balance in the e-NABLE fund, as you can see. So we are looking for good projects that can benefit the community. There is funding available. And the only noteworthy post that I wanted to share from the hub this week is from a new member, Dan Godfrey, who's an orthodontic dental technician, and he developed a device. It's always kind of cool when we see assistive devices that are not, prosthetics. So he has one here that he's developed for patients that have limited mouth opening, and it's called a trismus screw, I guess. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, he came up with a 3D printable design for that and is asking, if we know of a good reputable organization or website to host, non-hand related medical files for open source. So there's some good comments, but just this morning when I saw this, I pointed him to the NIH 3D Print Exchange, which I didn't see anybody else mentioning. Seems like a perfect fit for him. So
indeed.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything? That's the only one I could think of. Anyone know of others? Okay, well, very cool.
I think that's the right one.
Thanks for sharing that. And it's always wonderful to see other types of assistive tech besides the hands and arms that we do mostly. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And with that, I'm just going to touch on upcoming events, and then we'll hand it over to Jack. So we have the updated listing for May. Thank you for doing this, Ben. By the way, just as a note, when we do those monthly updates, we need to remember to update this page here. This one was actually still set on March, so I updated it and put the new schedule in here, but we always have to remember to go in and update this custom page here, this month's e-NABLE meetings. So for the May meeting.
And so people know too, the wiki underneath it has a listing of everything. So if anybody wants to try to figure out what happened a month before, if you click on the wiki, you'll see all the months.
Awesome. Thank you. That's good to know too. So you want to take us through this, Ben?
Sure. So Monday we had the e-NABLE education meeting with Tanya Lurch. Which was great. She had a lot to share about her curriculum and collaborations and some new resources that were, frankly, things that I think a lot of other chapters could use, which is great. So today, after the town hall meeting, we have the Bionic design group meeting with Esteban Rojas from Humanos 3D. They've been working on Bionics for several years, so they've got a new model that they're working on, and also some pretty unique outreach programs in Colombia going out into the countryside, which I'm sure they'll touch on. We've got a chapter leaders meeting taking a step from the last discussion about what's going on in Ukraine. I don't know, John, do you want to touch on any of that?
He might have stepped away. I don't see him here.
There are a few people. John, is it you?
Oh, there he is. Sorry, I didn't have your picture on my screen for some reason. John, anything to add?
Yes, we had a productive meeting a month ago. We discussed some possible roles for e-NABLE. Our people closer to the events in Ukraine, we're going to check with agencies that they knew of to see if we had field partners. And we will regroup and discuss that and try to see if there's a way we can be helpful or merely sympathetic, as long as we don't cause any trouble.
Wonderful.
And Friday, May 13th, Jack Buchanan will join us again to do more of a deep dive into the Kwawu 3. So some of the things that are identified today that are questions that people are interested in could be good starting points for the hour-long focused follow-up with Jack. And then at the end of the month, Friday, May 20th, John will do a tour of the new member resources and orientation materials. Excellent. That we have, including the new member space and the launch pad, and we'll work together some of the older videos that we have too, just to pull those things together. So if anybody got the email, you'll notice that some of the events are a little bit out of order. It turns out that it stacks it in sort of a funny way, but all the links should work. So
yeah. That's good. Thanks for doing that, Ben. And I don't know if we've talked about this before, but now that we're doing, I believe all of these events are going out via YouTube Live. Is that right? It's public live events. Is that how we're doing it now? So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you're not already, you will get, alerts and notifications as soon as those live events get started, and you'll get a notice saying e-NABLE is going live for this event. So it's a handy way to stay plugged into what's going on. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll start getting those live notices.
That's a really good point, Jeremy. I guess maybe in the newsletters, that fact should be featured at the top. That
maybe we should do a graphic banner or something. When I do our newsletters and I have a little tidbit that I want to make sure people see, I try to do it in like a banner graphic or something instead of just words. So maybe we should come up with a graphic to call attention to that. Okay, thanks for doing all that again, Ben. And I just noticed that we have one other new member joining us that I haven't seen here before, Alberto Navata. I don't know if you're in a position where you're able to talk and introduce yourself. If not, that's perfectly okay, but are you able to say hello?
Yes, I can. I just, yeah, today my schedule was quite free, so I was able to join the meeting. I'm
Excellent.
always following more or less of the activities, but um, I'm from Italy and I'm in charge of e-NABLE Italia chapter,
Okay.
and here we are still quite busy at this time in particular. So for me, it's not simple to attend to the meetings.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so glad you were able to join today. You definitely picked the right week. I think this is going to be a great presentation today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our special guest today. Stop my screen share here. And Jack, if you're ready, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself. And I need to ask because I'm always asking if I'm saying your name right. Do you go by Jack or am I?
Yeah, I generally go by Jack.
Okay.
The preference, if it's written, I generally write the full name. But spoken, I really don't care. However you go, either Jack or Jacqueline, which is sort of the odd American pronunciation of what is essentially a French name. And
Well, how is it pronounced?
You know, I don't know because I'm not French at all, but it would be Joaquin or something like that. It's a French last name, and my father just liked it, you know, a typical American story. And so growing up in the US, I just said Jacqueline because, you know, as a 5-year-old kid, that's what you would say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so glad we could get you in here. I have loved the videos that you've shared. It just, I was blown away, and I've really been looking forward to this, as I know others have. So thank you so much for making the time to join us for this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. You've got, you know, the remaining time here, about 45 minutes to use as you please. And if you want to share anything, I think you have permissions to do so. So over to you.
Awesome. So I was thinking more 15 today because
absolutely, yeah, whatever you
had
use.
said, hey, we'll do sort of like a quick overview and then a deep dive next time. But I am open for whatever the group wants to do.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there'll be some questions, and then we do have some other agenda items that we can go to if there's time permitting.
Okay.
So use whatever time you like.
Yeah, we'll go for it. So I'll just start with sort of a quick overview, right? So I came to e-NABLE in about 2016, 2017, right? As a lot of people did in who, you know, you hear stories of, oh, at least I do when people come to me or whatever, how did you get involved? They go, well, I bought a 3D printer and I wanted something to do with it. And so you know, I started printing things on 3D printers and then saw, I'm pretty sure it was e-NABLE in the DC fair, and saw one, said, this is really cool, and printed a few of them and liked it, and got to talking with John and got to talking with Jeff Aaronstone, who I'll talk about some, and then just went from there, and then just decided to try designing. I do have a computer science background. That's my background. That's my day job as software engineer. In college, I thought I'd be a sculptor. It was what one of the things I thought I would do. It was sort of sculpting, computer science. And my wise mom stepped in and said, well, why don't you do computer science? It'll probably pay a little better. And but the point being that I missed sculpting, and doing this sort of hands-on design work sort of allowed me to mix the two worlds a lot better. And so that's sort of how I came into the idea of, oh, this is really fun. And it really got to do something that I enjoyed. I worked with Jeff Aaronstone on something called the Lionel hand back in 2017-ish. And that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot from Jeff on that first go around on what he wanted. I still work a lot with Jeff Aaronstone. I can touch on it if you want. We have a project that we have been doing together for 3 or 4 years now called the Operation Namaste. There's a website for that. It is more about legs prosthetics and being able to present a way for people to make legs in the developing world. I've spoken with John Schul a little bit about it. Jeff, as a prosthetist, is more focused on meeting the needs of prosthetists. So I don't know that the Operation Namaste, how that will cross over to e-NABLE. We sort of have in our heads a way that it will, but I don't know what that's going to look like right now. But the Kwawu arm is definitely, in my mind, as the creator, sort of an e-NABLE project. It's e-NABLE inspired and sort of belongs to the e-NABLE open source world as a transhumeral arm. All right, so that's enough background. Unless anybody else wants to know any more backstory, just raise your hand or call out and ask. So Kwawu 3. So this is I have 4 different prints here. And if I ever get my videos finished, which I work on from 11 o'clock at night to 12 o'clock at night, I will be able to post them. And there's a lot of sort of instructional videos on assembly, and then another sort of basic introduction of the arm, which is another sort of 5-minute video. So for that video, I have built 4 different styles. This is the standard socket style arm. This is the standard, what I call the wrap. This is a leather version. So this is all leather, right? I just found that is way more comfortable, and I'll talk more about that. You can do, instead of leather, you can do this plastic. So there's this flexible plastic, which was inspired by sort of the laser printed wood, which you can do the same similar pattern, and it'll give a flexibility to it. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's start with the socket. I'm going to use this one. I have this one, and I have an adult size socket, but I'm not going to hold that one up for this particular video because I can't seem to get the distance right. and probably this one. This is a better example. So what are the changes? I'm going to try and go through these changes and then open it up. I'm just going to hit the changes from Kwawu 2 to Kwawu 3, and then ask for questions or deep dive, or what would people like to know more about. So one of the big changes was the stringing of the hand. I have a Kwawu 2 handy, but if you may have had the Kwawu 2, you would string the fingers up and then back down each finger, right? I designed the 2 that way originally because I wanted greater grip strength. That was the basic idea of it, was to improve grip strength by running the wire up and back. In the end of the day, I did lots of tests using the test that I'm gonna have a brain escape here. But our good friend at Mount St. Mary's University, who came up with a sort of grip strength test using the bulb for a pressure cuff for blood pressure, right? And you just squeeze it, you ball it up and squeeze it and see how much pressure you can apply on the grip. It's a great, nice little grip strength he came up with, and I use it a lot. And after doing that test and testing various different things, the stringing just didn't make much difference, right? And it made the device much more complicated to string because I had to have 2 grooves going up and down. These different thicknesses were not wide enough. And so by making a single groove, I could make that groove a lot bigger opening and therefore easier to string, particularly through this center flange. I could make that opening larger. I could make these edge pieces here thicker. So this little piece here used to break a lot on the Kwawu 2. It's a lot thicker on this Kwawu 3. I did have to tie the strings off in the end, but I pretty much just took the design straight from the Phoenix, right? How you would tie that off. That works well. And so that's sort of how I changed the stringing, made basically the stringing a lot easier. There's a bunch of other little tweaks in the hand, but the rest of it is mostly just tweaks. Oh no, the other big tweak was changing for different types of TPU. I got a lot of people who printing TPU is not easy. It's very susceptible to the temperature of the room. If you have a Bowden cable, if you don't have a direct drive, it's difficult to push the TPU through the Bowden cable. So it's not an easy print. I happen to have a direct drive printer I devoted just to TPU. So I tend to just devote direct drive. So I don't have trouble printing the various TPUs. I sort of have a printer set up just to do it. Originally, the Quawo 2, you really needed an 82A shore hardness TPU. So TPU comes in various elasticities. Elasticity is measured on a standardized scale of shore A hardness. It took me a while to figure out there's actually shore A, B, C, and D hardness, but TPU is generally only measured in shore A. But that is something you want to pay close attention to, is you want shore A hardness measurement. And the original Quawo 2, it really only worked if you used shore A 82, which the NinjaFlex is a shore A 82. There are other brands. There's only a few brands of the shore A 82. If you used a harder TPU, which there are more of, up into the 92, 95, the fingers just wouldn't move that well, right? They were kind of stiff because the TPU is stiffer, right?
If you don't mind me jumping in, Jack, if I'm not mistaken, unless they've changed it, I think the NinjaFlex is an 85A, but the Recreus Filaflex is 82A. So that might be a better fit.
It could be. You could be right. Generally, though, 82 or 85, you're not going to have a problem.
Okay.
Right. So in that range.
Got it.
Right. I've seen, I had forgotten that NinjaFlex is 85. Filaflex is, I guess, 82. There are some other brands, but in that low 80s is the best, and you're going to get the best behavior. But I did change how the shape of the fingers, the shape of the hinges, so you can go up to about 95, which is a fairly popular TPU hardness, and it'll still work okay. This particular child size is printed in the NinjaFlex 85, right? All these other hands, every other hand I'm going to hold up is printed in the 95. So works just as well. And basically I just gave it more space. I made the hinge a little thinner, gave it more space inside to twist and turn, and was able to make the 95 work all right. It took a lot of sort of test and eval, but it was something I wanted to do because just a lot more people were able to print a 95, 92, 95. Again, there's someone sort of in that range in the low to mid 90s. If you get up above 95, you're almost back to stiff plastic anyway. There are up in the hundreds, some others, but I just wouldn't recommend that.
And if you don't mind me jumping in again, I just want to point out that, there's a lot of people out there, including myself, that use printers that don't have the direct drive extruder, that use a Bowden tube to feed the filament in. And that's why this is so important, because it's quite easy to print a 95A on machines like that. But as you get down into the 80s, it gets very challenging without a direct drive extruder. So I look forward to hearing more either today or in your follow-up session about what exactly you changed to make the 95A work, because that's something that we could definitely take advantage of in other designs. That's great.
Yeah. I'm looking over, whenever I look over here, it's because I have a pile of stuff over here that I'm trying to get to pull on camera. So it's not that I'm not listening. I'm like, oh, what pile? And I just realized I don't have a pile of fingers, right, that I can whip out. So maybe I'll make a note and open up the fingers, and unless I have time to sort of pull one apart, which doesn't take too long. But the big thing I did was make the hinge thinner. Right. So that was a straightforward fix, but I needed to give it more space to twist. So if I were to open this finger up, there's more space inside there. Before it was kind of between the two fingers, there was a little bit of space. And so the TPU had, say, that much space to twist. And by sort of creating a larger cup on both sides, right, I gave the hinge more space.
So what did what modeling program are you using?
Most everything is modeled in, originally, I use a bunch of modeling programs.
Okay. We don't have to get into that now. The only reason I'm asking is I'm wondering if for the deep dive follow-up session you're going to do, I wonder if part of that could be actually pulling up your modeling program and doing some, section analysis views so we can actually see inside and what you did and some of those internal geometries?
Yeah, okay, that's a good idea. What could be well done is
and I'm
give that
taking
some
some
thought.
notes for you, so I can email you all the comments and some of the notes that are coming together. So,
but yeah, that would be awesome. I'm trying to type down here at the same time. Yeah, I'll have to give that some thought, right? So as a sweeping overview, I generally sculpt in Blender. Right?
Okay.
So the sort of shape of the general hand is sculpted in Blender. The bulk of the design work is done in Fusion 360. So I pull the sculpture into Blender, particularly of the hand, and sort of carve it up, for lack of a better word, in Fusion 360. And then export particularly these finger parts, right, out of Fusion 360, and then go into OpenSCAD. And OpenSCAD is what the users download. And OpenSCAD does modifications. It will also sort of open up the hinges and does all of the threads and bolt holes and everything like that are then carved into that. So
does that mean that your design, this is essentially a parametric design that regardless of what scale you're making the hand, the OpenSCAD will keep the holes for the screws the same size,
yes,
and the gaps between moving parts the same size and all that?
Yes, definitely.
Amazing.
Definitely. It's all done with OpenSCAD, right? So this, right, and this, right? These bolts in the palm are all standard bolt sizes. They're all metric, but they're standard bolt sizes. So I could put this size bolt in this hand if I wanted. Same with the bolts at the elbow. Anything that is a bolt or a screw is rendered in OpenSCAD as a standard metric bolt size. And I do just stick to metric, forcing the US people to go to metric. And but as I didn't really say in the intro, but my primary goal is overseas. And that affects a lot of my design decisions. Let me take a little bit and say that right now, right? For me, my goal, my personal, and this is not sort of something I push on other people, but my personal goal in e-NABLE, when I got into e-NABLE, by the time I was hanging around with everybody by 2018 and 2019, was to meet the need in, they have a politically correct term now called NIPS or NITS or, low income countries or something like that. And just because the need there is great, right? You have here in the US, the need for a transradial arm, for good reasons is not that high, right? We don't have a lot of people getting arms amputated. There are still certain genetic diseases you can be born with that cause it to happen, but it's not a huge number. Whereas if you get into a place like, our friends in Sierra Leone or Syria, or now in any place that's had a recent conflict, you can reach the hundreds of thousands or millions of recipients. And so it becomes a very big number, and they don't have any ways of getting a prosthetic. So the idea of a local person or clinician, maybe somebody who has limited prosthetic making experience, can get online and make a prosthetic for somebody. That was my goal, right? That was when I said, hey, I'm going to take this Kwawu and keep working on it. Those are the people that I'm trying to meet. Now, I love the e-NABLE group and I want to meet everybody here. But when I make a design decision, the driving force is, what can somebody in Sierra Leone make, right? If they can't make it there, if I have to make a design choice, then I'm going to, and if it's between something that, is anybody can go get this in Lowe's, or no, they could never get that in Lowe's in Sierra Leone, I'm going to go with the maybe even less good design, yet something they could make in a low-income country or near a conflict zone, as opposed to something that might actually be even better, but you could only make in the US or Europe. Right. So that drives a lot of my design decisions. So I try to make all the parts 3D printable, because my base assumption is you've got a 3D printer there. And I try to make all of the parts easily accessible or something that you can get. So it was a big decision for me to jump to leather. right? It was a big deal to go, you know, can they get leather, and can somebody know how to work leather? And, you know, I just talked with people in various parts, and yeah, pretty much, I don't care where you are, there's somebody who makes a leather sandal, right? No matter any part of the world you go, there's guys walking around in leather sandals. So they know how to cut leather and work leather a lot better than I'm requiring here. So that was sort of a big decision on my part to sort of jump to leather. But I really try and minimize the bolts and screws and things like that. I want them to be 3D printable. The elbow bolt, I really do think is 3D printable now. It works pretty well. And every one that I've delivered, I've used the 3D printed elbow bolt. I still, when I deliver a hand, use a nylon bolt for the hand. The new Quawu 3 3D printed bolt does work. It works well. I probably would give it 5, less than 10 insertions, right, on the 3D printed bolt in the hand. And because I'm always doing things like this, I do need a lot more than 10. So I tend to use the nylon bolt because I can get them. They're just as light and a lot more durable. On a hand that I'm demoing a lot, like this one, I actually use a metal bolt in there because this one I sort of carry with me, and these two are sort of my child size, carry with me anywhere. So they actually have metal bolts in there because I'm taking these apart very often. So now I forgot where I was. I was talking about the hand and the changes made there. And then the wrist was a big change. I posted the video on there, and I didn't grab those parts again, but the wrist was a lot of fun. Again, just to go through it, there's a little button here. You press the button, right, and rotate the wrist, and then it'll pop and lock in that spot, right? It's a nice wrist button. It works at all the sizes. This is one of those that takes a lot of prints. It took me a lot of prints to get this design right. I had another design, and I'm looking over here to see if I still have it, but I also really liked, and I forgot to grab it. I'll grab it for the next meeting. But it was, instead of having to push the button, the ratchet would just sort of spin freely, and you could sort of rotate it, and it would hold in place. I liked that a lot. I had it in Quawu 3 for almost a year, but I didn't. It would hold a lot better than the Quawu 2. And what I liked about it was you could sort of spin it and turn it without pressing the button. But if you really lifted a heavy object, it might twist on its own, right? That was a problem. That was what I was getting away from with the Quawu 2. If you're lifting something heavy, the bolt would just spin on its own. And I wanted to be able to really lock in place. And I'll show the iterations next time that I went through for that wrist lock. It was a lot of iterations. In my demo video I'm putting together, I sort of answer the question, well, how many prints do you make? And I do a little stack of the 2 kilogram rolls, right? And I think I have 2 or 3 dozen of them, right? So 2 or 3 dozen 2 kilogram rolls is what it takes to go from Quawu 2 to Quawu 3, right? It's a lot of prints. And I'm really happy with the wrist print and how it works. It took a lot to get it to print so that it acted, this way. It was easy to press and rotate on that size. Yet if you printed this size, it was also still similar, easy to print and rotate and lock in place, right? To get the button action to be the same. I did all of my tests almost completely on PETG. If I didn't say that so far, I generally recommend PETG as the print material. It has a great strength to print ratio, right? That's what I'm looking for. So anything that has a behavior similar to PETG. It has good strength, relatively easy to print, easy to get, and has a good strength. I got away from PLA. It's just not as strong. We did a lot of force meter tests. We built a jury rig force meter, very similar to the one that Skip used to make, right? He would show that, And I have a group of guys I work with, and they put together this force meter, and we did a lot of force meter tests and sort of came away with PETG. Are there better, stronger plastics out there? Yes, but they're harder to print, harder to get in skin tone and stuff like that. So PETG is the happy medium we went with. So the behavior of this button is assuming PETG, right? That level of flexibility and stiffness. It'll work with PLA and it'll work with ABS, but it really is assuming PETG, and I recommend PETG. Same with the latch. When I get to the latch, this little part here, the internal latch mechanism, I'm assuming PETG. I did all the tests, strength tests with PETG. For this little latch, definitely don't use PLA. It's there are little pieces in there. And after you sort of do this 100 times, the PLA will likely break. So definitely for the latch mechanism, you want to use PETG or something PETG or stronger. And if you go stiffer, then it won't latch right. So that's that and the rest. Let me talk about the arm for a little bit, the socket arm in particular. The socket arm now in the version 3 is completely open SCAD generated. Right? In version 2, I sculpted the arm, did the whole thing I described before. I sculpted it in get a quasi arm shape, then modified it in Fusion, and then further modified in OpenSCAD. This version is completely OpenSCAD generated. And the reason is I wanted to get closer to a good fit. And the way you measure the arm, when you measure a recipient, you start at the elbow crease and you measure each inch, a diameter each inch down the arm until you get to the end of the residual. So you take that 1 inch measurement, a measurement every inch, put it into OpenSCAD, and it uses the loft type mechanism and lofts the arm shape. And so if you open up that code, and I could deep dive into it, it's kind of a mathematical and artistic flair built into that code, right? There's a few hard-coded numbers to sort of give it a nice little arm-like shape. And that is sort of a trial and error set of numbers, and that are combined together with the numbers you enter to give it that to loft this arm shape. So you have a lot of recipients who will have maybe a large bulb. Depends on how their amputation was done. The arm can be can have a bulb in it or odd shapes, and so you want to be able to accommodate that. And that was a big deal. I wanted to be able to go to a completely lofted arm shape. So the inside of the socket, right, will match whatever that loft shape was, right, and close down by the end. And the outside shape is going to sort of use a separate algorithm to kind of give it an army look, right, arm-like look. That was really important to me. As an aside, Quawu 4, I'll probably require a scan of the arm, right? That's the direction I'm going. I think scanners are available, easy to get at. I've been working a lot with photogrammetry. I think photogrammetry will work well enough to do that, or a scan, a structure scanner or something like that. That'll probably be where Quawu 4 goes. So I can get an even better fit. Quawu 4 will probably be a good example of where I cross over between e-NABLE and what we're doing in Operation Namaste. Operation Namaste, we require a scan of the leg residual. What's nice about a scan is you can now share that scan over the internet with an actual prosthetist. And the magic that a prosthetist does in this whole design, they have a 4-year degree in making prosthetics, but the part that they really care about is the inside of this socket, the shape of the inside of the socket. That's what their magic comes in. And that's where you want their input, right? Is what does that shape look like? Right now, with this Quawu, they have no input. It's a cylinder, right? And you know, Jeff laughs. He's like, that's probably better than what the Oser's providing. But really, if you could provide them with a scan, and then they could sort of sculpt on that scan and make it a shape that they want it, So they would, in essence, be creating the shape of the inside of that socket the way they want it, and then pass that scan back to somebody, you know, like a group in e-NABLE. Then the rest of it could be made by an e-NABLE volunteer and be fine. Right? So that sort of collaboration is where I'd probably like to go with Kwawu 4, will be how can I enable that to pass back and forth, which will require a scan of the residual. But back to this one. When you're entering the values, you're entering an inch, a measurement every inch all the way down. And then you measure an arm length. The arm length is basically from this crease up to this point. So that might be longer than the residual, or should be longer than the residual, but can maybe only be a little bit longer. I recommend making it just long enough to fit the wrist bolt, right? In this one, I've made it sort of a standard arm length, right? I do have something I can grab. This is a bastardization of a Kwawu 2 that I tried to make for somebody, and that I wanted Kwawu 2 to be able to do, which was she had a relatively short residual, which is common, but I only wanted the arm a little bit shorter than the residual, right? It doesn't look natural, but it feels a lot better, right? And it's a lot more functional. They got a lot more leverage. Somebody who has a really short residual has their whole life, or ever since they've had that, they're not used to lifting all of this arm. Their muscles aren't there anymore. So if you can make the arm, you know, this much shorter, right, you're giving them a lot more leverage. And in the Kwawu 3, you can enter an arm. So I have this here because this was my motivation to make sure that I could build this in the Kwawu 3, that the arm, you can make the arm just a little bit shorter than the residual. You need it to be just short enough to fit the bolt mechanism, right? And I think that functionally that's a lot better. Again, you just need to ask the recipient what they want. Some recipients just want it to look natural arm length. And of course, you should make whatever they want you to make. But for functionality, I would say make it shorter. You can make the arm in one piece. You can't see, there's no crease in that one, or there's a crease in this one in the middle. There's just you enter that number. If you make that number just longer than the length of the arm, then it'll do the whole thing. And you can enter any value. You can enter any value, but I'll say in the video, you know, it needs to be between the wrist bolt and this, the latch mechanism. You have to cut it. You can't cut it here in the middle of the latch, and you can't cut it here down in the middle of the wrist bolt. It just won't work. And the code will kind of barf on you. So I don't protect against that. I just sort of say, don't do that, right? Your STLs will look funny anyway. So hopefully people figure that out pretty quick. But anywhere in between those two spots, you can sort of make the cut on the arm, and the code will generate the two pieces fine. I went over the latch in the other video, right? I like this latch a lot, right? You move it back and forth. When it's latched, the hand closes and elbow moves freely. When you open it, now it's going to stick on. Oh, yeah. When you open it, then moving the arm moves it back and forth. I had the video where I opened that up, and I can open this up and have some pieces ready. This is another one of those things where it's probably 3 or 4, 6 kilogram, 2 or 3 kilogram rolls just doing the latch to get that mechanism the way I like it. And the trick was getting it to function well at this small size where it ratchets, and still function well when it gets generated at the larger size, right? Just that the teeth and the ratchet mechanism ratchets and latches. It just takes a lot of design and trial and error work to get that right. I think there's some differences in the cuff, right? You'll notice that the cuff hands, and this is all generated automatically, right? This one will bend out to match that. And if you enter a really wide cuff, you'll see these shapes will change depending on the diameter you've entered for the cuff versus the first diameter you've entered here. The shape of these will change to match that. And that's all generated in the OpenSCAD code. I think that's everything. I didn't write down, but I'm going to write down a long list of people to thank for next time, because every one of those little changes generally comes from a series of emails I get. I get a fair amount of emails, and I love getting them from people saying, hey, by the way, how do you do this, or how do you do that, or here's an idea I have to make it better. And they all come from the e-NABLE group in general. There are people, that I've been emailing back and forth with since 2017 or 2016, and always sort of come up with ideas. I have a small group of people, about 5 to 10, it kind of varies, of my own e-NABLE chapter, even though I still haven't registered it. But all we really do is do the Kwawu design. But it's 5 to 10 people and we meet in the Loveland creator space. So it's a typical sort of creator space chapter. And they help a lot. They do a lot of prints. Some of the guys, because Aleph, who made the Lulzbot, was right here in Loveland, and a lot of sort of ex-Lulzbot employees. And so they were complete printer nerds. And so they were always sort of trying different printer things and doing different sort of odd things that we would do with a printer just to try it out. And so they don't mind going home and printing, 2 spools worth of something and coming back with it. And for example, I really have to credit them. I had this idea of this adjustable plastic, right? And it has these little slats in it. The design is completely taken from laser printing wood, right? If you get an 1/8 inch thick wood and you do this laser print pattern, it comes nice and bendable. You can find that online. I wanted to do that because again, with this wrap design, people have really odd shaped arms, right? People have like a big lump here, even though it's all the way down to here, they might have a big lump in the middle, or various different things. And I wanted to be able to accommodate that with a more adjustable wrap. And so that's why I went to this flexible size. We spent a long time making these little slots, different lengths and different sizes, and printing in PETG and PLA and all sorts of things. And another, 2 or 3 spools of a plastic. And we had a little force meter, that we would pull on it with and see, how much bend force it took and how much pull force it could take, and came up with this optimal slat design. You can change, if you go in the code, you can change the slats. I don't think you'll get any better, right? We wanted maximum flexibility and maximum strength. And we couldn't, and no matter if we made this more slats, it would get too weak. And if you made less slats and to make it stronger, it wouldn't bend anymore. So we really kind of honed in on this, this slat design. If you're the biggest thing is to get it to print well. You want the slats to be open, and you want your interior to walls to connect well, right? You don't want your plastic internally to start ripping apart. You want that to bond well. And I'll try and go through that in the video. But there's a lot there. And then after spending probably a year of printing on that, I was like, no, leather is better. and all the guys there were like, well, we've just spent, months, coming up with this. So you can still do this, but leather is just
Jack, I know you mentioned that you're using PETG for your testing. I'm just curious, what kind of 3D printer do you use, and what kind of slicing software are you using?
So I have a couple of different 3D printers. I generally when people ask me that question today, I say the Creality S10, because it's a $500 printer, does a good job, medium-sized Bowden cable. I modified mine pretty heavily, but only to make it quieter, right? I like my printer is right over there, right? I like it quiet. And so I did heavy modifications, but just to make it quieter. It prints just fine out of the box, and it's a good price. Again, my geek friends at Lulzbot, they'll have Lulzbot printers. They have completely custom made, a lot of Prusas. So because I have that group, I can rely on, we make sure that we print on at least 5 or 6 or 10 different printer types. One guy loves deltas, so he prints everything on deltas, and so just to make sure it works.
Yep.
As an aside, again, sort of looking forward, I will probably move to, I have a new Core XY printer. I'm generally moving to Core XY, and the only real reason is these prints here, right? If I'm printing a long, tall thing like that, the Core XY, because it's not moving the bed around, tends to print a tall, thin thing like this better. And so but I would just go with the Core XY, what is it? The Ender 6 from Creality is what I bought.
Or Ender 7.
Yeah, or the 7. I think I went with the 6 because it was bigger.
Yep.
Right. So with the Operation Namaste, I'm doing leg sockets, and your average leg socket, is more like that. And I want something that does about that much volume. But so I would recommend shifting to a Core XY. It has its problems, but the main reason that I'm shifting to it is to get long, tall prints better. Anything else? I think I've covered most of what.
Jack, I just want to say that the quality of the work, the quantity of the work, the amount of time, effort, testing, and iteration that you've done is really extraordinary. I want to congratulate you and all of the people you haven't mentioned. It's really an amazing effort.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a beautiful thing. It's obviously just a beautiful work of engineering and art. You've mentioned that there are parts of the world where there are hundreds of thousands or millions of people who might benefit from this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your experience trying to get it out in the world where it does what it's meant to do.
Yeah, so that is both good and bad, in the sense that the best way that I have found for personally is to hook up with a local group who's going to take it seriously and support their recipients and make and learn how to make prosthetics and sort of repeat with that recipient, right? In the US, there are very good chapters that do that. I like to mention the North Carolina chapter because I just love those guys. They do a great job, right, of following up on their recipients and doing parties for their recipients and just really getting involved, right? And so I like to find somebody like that in country. The guys you're doing this afternoon, right, are a great example. I've talked with them a fair amount on their design. They're an example of somebody who I have emailed over the years, right, regularly, and they'll come up with an idea, and they wanted to do the Bionic design, and I said, go for it, dudes. It's not something I'm going to do anytime soon for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. Have at it. I'll give you whatever information you need. And but they are a group that is meeting the need of they're going out, reaching out to recipients, finding recipients and reaching out to them and keeping in touch with them is a big deal. It takes a lot of work, right? You need to, particularly if you're somewhere in the developing world, you need to, a lot of groups, it varies. Some groups will do things like pay people to come in, literally say, oh, if you come in, I'll give you a recipient, right? Give you an arm. And it can work both ways. Sometimes it'll make them pay. They say, oh, if you come in, you have to pay $25 because that puts skin in their game. And then they'll say, okay, if you come back to me in a month, I'll give you back $5, right? Or something like that, because you've got to get the person coming back and sort of see how it fits and how it works. And did they break anything? And can you fix it? And in the US or anywhere in the world, people don't come back. Right? They rarely do. It's just been in the US, I'm speculating because they got this free arm and it broke after 6 months and they're embarrassed to come back and say they broke it. No matter how much I say, no, really, please just come back. I'll fix it. I love doing this. It's hard to get them to come back. And it's actually harder in the places where we're trying to reach. So this idea of sort of coming up with a mechanism that works locally in your country, whether it's charging $25, giving $5 back every time they come, get them to come back every 6 months. some groups in Colombia, in Nepal, places like that I know of, there's the staff of people that is interacting with the recipients is 4 or 5 times the staff of people that are actually making the arms. Often in Nepal, they have staff of people who go out, right? So if somebody gets a leg or an arm or what have you, they're noted, and then somebody will go visit them every 6 months, because getting that person to come back is extremely difficult. And so it's easier to pay somebody to go out and visit them every 6 months to a year. And so now your staff of people who are visiting people is larger than anybody who's actually making them. So I'm sort of going back and forth that interacting with the recipient is probably 80% of the work. Yeah. And only 20% of the work is what I do, right? The fun part that I do, right? And coming up with a design. And yes, it's important to come up with a design that works, and getting a prosthetist who knows how to fit the arm, locally. So a lot of the local clinics that I work with around the world, they have a prosthetist on staff. And so they have a 3D printer geek who doesn't mind printing them, and they have a prosthetist who is working with them to making sure that the fit is good enough. They will often be in the prosthetist world. They have the IPO, the International Association of Prosthetics and Orthotics. They have levels of prosthetists, level 1, 2, 3. And level 1 is what you would get if you went into a US office, right? It's a highly trained 4-year degree prosthetist. A level 2 is somewhere in between. And a level 3 is sort of a glorified clinician. Yes, they've taken some training. They kind of know what they're doing. They probably are building a 10, 20, 30-year-old design. So anywhere outside of the US and Europe, you're getting a level 3 prosthetist, right? You're lucky if you can get a level 2 or level 1 prosthetist. So big deal is, how can I take a level 3 prosthetist and have them make a level 1 design? And so that's a big deal. A lot of things that I work with Jeff about, right? I talk with Jeff twice a week, right? We spend a lot of time together, and figuring out, okay, how can we get, and Jeff, and I'll credit him, has come up with this idea. He wants to call a level 4 prosthetist, and he's a prosthetist, and we work with the ISPO, we work with HUI, we work with Red Cross, and he wants to get those guys to call something called a level 4 prosthetist. This is Jeff's idea. A level 4 prosthetist is somebody who's probably a clinician, probably a professional medical profession of some person, but they're all you got when you land in Sierra Leone, or Syria, or now over in the east, in the Ukraine. That's what you got, right? You don't have a level 2, 3, whatever. And so you have to train that person as quickly as you can and give them the tools to make, a level 1 device. And so that's a big deal.
So, Jack, I don't know whether you've been monitoring our town hall meetings, but we are going through a leadership transition right now. And Bob Rieger has retired. Jeremy and I are reducing our involvement. I don't think we're ever going to be not connected with e-NABLE, but there are a number of people. Jeff Powell in North Carolina is one of them, who have just been doing extraordinary work over the years. And Eric Bubar and Ian Roy at Brandeis, all sort of beginning to step into a process of envisioning what would the next iteration of e-NABLE be like with their experience and their ideas. And there are a number of superb designs now. Yours being, I think, one of the very, very best examples. This question of how do we get them out in the world is, of course, it's the hardest question of all, as you point out.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer, but I do think that you know more about the question and possibly the answer than offhand anyone I can think about, certainly thinking about these organizational and professional relationships. I don't talk to Jeff anymore. I'd like you to give him my regards, but you actually have been able to keep a foot or an arm in both communities. And I just want you to be alert to the fact that there's a transition possible and underway. B, we have tens of thousands of dollars in the Enable Fund right now. And if you have any ideas for how to use that to increase the impact of the designs we're having on the people who use those designs as makers and deliverers and maintainers, it's a really good opportunity to think about it.
Yeah.
You know, we as a volunteer community, these are all things, as you point out, that often require professional commitments, which is hard to get out of a volunteer community, and yet it does happen sporadically. So I just want you to know.
And even though you have been and are, I'm sure, fully willing to do these on your own dime, Jack, I want to just clarify, we need to use this money. We need to put this money to good use and show good results so that we can justify another round from our, supporters. So give it some thought. We need good projects that are going to benefit the whole community and further our goals. And I just want to echo, we're going to have to wrap up here. I just want to echo what John said about the fantastic work that you're doing. I would encourage you not to even limit your thinking to, how we get devices out there. That's certainly a very core issue and important, and we can benefit from your input on it. But gosh, you have so much to offer in terms of your design approach, the way you went about thinking about what's important and who your target audience is. And there's just, I hope that you get involved in that sort of leadership group that we're talking about. You need to be part of that. I want to thank you for a fantastic presentation and just say that we've collected a whole bunch of questions and comments in the chat, which Ben has gathered. And so he'll share those all with you. And if you can maybe work those into your deep dive presentation then on the 13th. Is it the 13th? Is that right, Ben? That would be fantastic. And I think we'll have to then there's so many questions that I think not just me, others here have, but let's save those for the 13th, if that's okay. And I think this was just a great opportunity to give us a taste and give us an opportunity to come up with those questions. So thank you.
And thank you. I forgot to thank you for rescheduling and accommodating sort of my snafu last week. That was really nice.
It wasn't your snafu. That's something that we would have talked about. We'll talk about next week, which is we're having some time zone issues with the hub. It's mistranslating some of the times on events. So that was certainly not your fault. And we will be talking about how we deal with that next time. So for now, we'll just say, be careful, folks. Pay attention to the time listings and make sure that it's translated correctly. Ask questions, post comments if you want to be sure, and we'll get into that next week and talk about how to fix that. But thank you so much, Jack, and I really look forward to talking further on the 13th. And there's so much I want to hear more about, but thank you for your time today.
Cool. Awesome.
Anybody have anything that we do need to address real quick before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thank you all. And then Ben, stay with me. Everyone else, see you all next week. Thank you.
And a heads up that we'll be posting this on the hub, and anybody can add comments to the post, and those comments can be also worked into Jack's presentation. So if anybody asynchronously wants to follow up, you've got a couple weeks, or you've got a week to get your questions in.
Oh, and one last thing. I did have the live transcriptions going on Zoom here, which is kind of a new feature. And I just want to apologize for making it look like you're doing all this work to help prostitutes, Jack. It's just
I didn't see that.
Sometimes,
I was dying laughing when that came
Yeah,
up.
it's pretty fun. All right, everyone. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.